Hello and welcome to our episode of Fintech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb, and today I'm absolutely delighted to have in the studio Matt Ryan from Totem. Matt, how are you?
Very well, Tony. How are you?
Very good indeed, thank you. Listen, lovely to have you in. Thanks for coming on the show. We've had a little preamble beforehand, and you are in a very interesting space at the moment. There's lots of innovation coming through. As I mentioned to you at the very start of this, I guess back at the where Fintech Focus really found its feet and started its name was during COVID. And a lot of it was about us helping people to get their voice out to brands once everyone was panicking about the world shutting down, the events program shutting down. Where were they going to meet their clients? How were they going to get their messages out? The world went to webinar very quickly. There's lots of different successes and failures within that sort of space. And there's an evolution of thought process around the whole event industry that came up from there as well. I know you guys have been very deeply embedded in the whole fintech space where it's traditionally been very event heavy. And there's been some magnificent performances, I think, from events companies within this space, and it's become very, I think, critical to making the world go round in the whole area. So we've got lots to dive into and all of that sort of thing, but before we kick off, tell us a little bit about yourself and Totem, if you would.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Matt, as you said in the first instance. I've come into Totem basically to build their proposition and kind of educate the world that it supports into how they can do things better. So I come from a SaaS background through a couple of different industries, delivered great success there, and saw this as an exciting new challenge. So that's me, but enough about me. Totem has been in the event sector for over 20 years. They've been putting on experiences and a quality of experience that is representative of the brands and the events that they represent worldwide. Informa is our biggest client, so we're putting on over 600 events a year all across the world.
Wow.
Before COVID, we started to add a technology arm to the business, some software and actually some hardware that supported an improved UGC experience, so user-generated content, and so that kind of started our technological thinking, and then COVID happened. And as you say, that caused a major problem for the events industry, Informa being no different. And so hand in hand, we set about building very quickly a very, very powerful, very intuitive piece of software to support virtual events and going forwards hybrid events. And that's 4 or 5 years ago now. And that served very, very well. And now, that technology has expanded and grown to the mobile app, the sort of community platform, and everything else that comes with it, to generate an environment where one user only needs to go once and goes through, whether it be an AGM, an investor meeting, a webinar, an in-person event, through the mobile app, a content platform. They only need to go to one place. Our clients only need to manage one thing, and what that creates is obviously a single source of truth in terms of the data. So it's exciting times.
I think that tech piece is fascinating, isn't it? Because as we were sort of intimating beforehand, I think there's sort of cycles of people falling in and out of love with events, and I guess the biggest thing when you look at it from an ROI perspective is it's not cheap to go and exhibit an event. It's not cheap to put an event together, and so everyone who's doing that will be looking back at the ROI, and I guess tech is the best way of making that efficiency gains and the productivity gains, and actually measuring that sort of focus as well. Because whilst there's always been ways of checking it through the business cards that come back from it, all that sort of stuff,
the bar bills, to
actually look at this and say this is how we can actually democratise that, and you use the magic word there, data, right? It's the sort of mot du jour, and always has been for quite some time, in terms of how people can create better experiences and better outcomes for people. How are you guys involved in that to I think create that?
Yeah, I think that's key. Is people talk about what COVID did to events, and after COVID everybody's desperate to kind of get back to in person. But the one thing that did come out of COVID was, actually, if everyone joins online, we can see who attended what, who met who's interested in what, and we can actually get a better understanding and measurement, as you say, as to the success of that event. So then everyone moved back into back in person. The question is, well, how can we continue to do that? And that's where mobile app technology and other bits and pieces help you to do that. And connecting the two is obviously key as well, because it's 2024. People have got ESG goals and responsibilities. Accessibility is another key issue for events, and so being able to attend the event either in person or digitally and have as close to the same experience as possible is key. And you might attend one event online and one event in person, but if you do that through one piece of technology, then that data picture builds.
Still picks up the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so I think this is another area there. You mentioned there about the being able to work out from, I guess, heat maps effectively about what people are interested in and what's going well and where the agenda is the right sort of thing. One of the complaints I hear from people is agendas can sometimes be a bit sleepy, a little bit, we need to tick an X box or Y box and have that sort of stuff on there. And people go in there and almost event sleepy in terms of just coming in there and hearing the same sort of stuff, just in a different sort of guise. So they get the networking bit, they know they've got to be there, but sometimes the content bit gets the easy, low-hanging fruit of criticism and saying, right, okay, is there something there? This, I guess, is about pointing people in the right direction and improving that experience so people can have that sort of stuff and give real feedback, I guess, about what's working and what's interesting to people. It's
absolutely about doing that. It's about matching the sessions and the experiences and the contents with the people and their interests, about understanding them better so that you can do that and actually start to give them a more resonant, curated experience, if you like. That's really key, and you can use heat mapping to do that. You can see where people have been in a room, etc., etc. But if you're a bit more dynamic with your thinking, you can also use the tool as a networking tool and actually an icebreaker, and you can connect people, you can match people together, you can foster conversations, you can have peer-to-peer meetings, so that they're in person, they're having those human interactions, if you like, but they're being facilitated within technology as well. And you might sit in a session and there'll be a live poll or there'll be a Q&A, and that's all done through technology as well. So it actually improves the event. As well as just capturing data.
I think that's sort of element over the last couple of years of having polls rather than raises of hands and about what it can look like, and actually gives a real sort of, I guess, actionable insight for people to then come out and sort of take away as a takeaway from the actual event itself.
And you can look at your event, understand much better what succeeded, what didn't succeed, and actually how people felt about it, most importantly, to shape your events of the future. And
that, I guess, increases the returning people to the event again, sees people coming back, improves the size and shape. Everyone's ambition is to go bigger and better again year on year. And actually I think that's quite an interesting phase, because the old industry events in fintech from 10-15 years ago were basically bums on seats and no bells and whistles and not particularly much else around it. It feels like there's a real arms race at the moment to do things more innovative, to build a memory but to build a sort of bespoke, tailored solution, and something that people can talk about, as opposed to just having a conference centre with a bunch of people in there right now.
As it should be. It should be an experience.
Exactly.
An experience and memories, as you say, are a good indicator of how good that experience was.
Very true. And I guess that sort of moves into the whole concept you're talking about hospitality, and you coined the term digital hospitality.
Yes.
And which I love, and as I mentioned to you before, I'm sort of quite geekily getting involved in the hospitality world at the moment, and sort of really understanding the sort of secrets of service from there. I've just read a brilliant book called Unreasonable Hospitality, which talks about the restaurant industry, but I think it sort of goes across to every single experience which you're looking at, be it the services industry, be it the event industry, be it any sort of profession. You're looking to create those memories and create those experiences. So talk to me about what digital hospitality looks like to you.
Sure. I mean, I sometimes describe it as a SaaS house.
Yeah.
Because we're software and service as a service.
Okay.
It's very much white glove, and we support financial services clients in particular very well because we understand the importance of brand perception and the quality of the experience with them.
Yeah.
When it comes to the technological side of hosting clients or investors, more often than not, these institutions fall short. So you'll go into a multi-million pound address. You'll have the most salubrious reception, a beautiful boardroom. All of this experience is paid for to create a feeling of prestige to the people that you host in that environment. And yet, when you host the same person online, you'll send them a link to a Teams or a Zoom meeting, or you'll do your quarterly results call in a generic webinar platform, go to webinar, whatever it is. And that represents the brand in no way, shape or form. People go into a box, they have the session and the session ends, and it doesn't make them feel anything, it doesn't represent your brand, you don't know how they felt, and they take nothing else away, and that's just not good enough. It just doesn't stack up, doesn't make any sense. And so, the digital hospitality and whether or not that's up to scratch across the industry is something that I've been challenging for a few months now.
And how's that been received?
It's been received very well, actually.
Yeah.
It's people are taking a moment just to think about it and accept that, perhaps you're right, we're spending £200 a year on a video meeting subscription.
Yeah.
That isn't good enough.
Yeah.
And you don't need to spend the same kind of money you do on as your physical environments, but you can improve things quite dramatically without going crazy. So
I think that's incredibly important and perceptive, actually, because you're absolutely right. There's some foyers that I've been in that are quite frankly stunning to be in it, and you go through and you walk through that sort of thing, and the hospitality element there is immense in some of the most prestigious financial institutions. You walk through to their where they hold their events, and it's as you say, the white glove service.
Yeah.
And then you flip it through to where they hold a webinar or a investor call, as you say, and it is at very best amateur in terms of how they go through it. And I guess that's not been front and centre of the agenda, probably because we're still lagging a little bit from this being relatively new and relatively accelerated through COVID to do things. It was a kind of plug and play aspect that's now sort of evolving a little bit further. And the benefit of that and the continuity, I guess, is so important for businesses where you do say, where brand is important, where recognition is important, where prestige is part of their DNA, their marketing, their brand.
Yep.
It's an important thing to add into it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely crucial. I couldn't agree more.
Tell me a little bit about the personalisation aspect, because this is something, again, which I've got a sort of unhealthy obsession about in terms of how... across so many areas of our life at the moment, we've got this hyper-personalisation.
Yeah.
Amazon, obviously, the sort of obvious pioneer of that, where you've got people like you bought this, and you have the relevant things delivered to your, to your inbox every single day, and every single aspect of how easy it is for you to interact with them is choreographed and thought out and benchmarked into something there that just makes everything as easy as possible for you.
Yep.
Makes everyone's life easier, the part of it. I've also spoken on this show many times about my interest in Tesco Club Card. Not that I have one, but I am always... I read a book called Scoring Points, which talks about Edwina Dunn and Clive Humby and how they revolutionised the fortunes of Tesco through Club Card. And again, it was about personalisation of the right offer at the right time to the right people. How does personalisation come into what you and the team are able to provide?
Well, in terms of what we're able to provide, it is an environment that is appealing and resonant and curated to the person that enters it.
Yeah.
It's not my quote, but I mentioned earlier I was at a recent marketing breakfast, and this guy said we spend a fortune on very customised, personalised retargeting and marketing campaigns, and yet every visit to the homepage of our website is like a first date. And that's very, very true. People host content on their website, and they have these environments, and more often than not, all that they know about them is the monthly report they run on their GA or whatever that says this many people came to this page this month, the average dwell time was this, the bounce rate was this, and maybe you find out where they're extra, but you don't know who they are, you don't know what they're interested in, and you don't know how they felt. And so in the same way that we do this in events, and obviously we capture that data from events, that's people can do it two ways. They can create an environment, an audience home in the first instance, and then move people into their events, or vice versa. But what you do is you have one area, one sign-in, if you like, so that you come into an environment, it knows who you are, and therefore you start to get this Amazon experience. So you're interested in private equity or whatever it might be. So suddenly it's going to start showing you podcasts or articles or whatever it is that are based on what you've done before, what you did at an event, who maybe you networked with, and that's key. It's because in doing that you're more likely to come back. Right? You've gone in and there's maybe been 3 things immediately that you see that are of interest to you rather than one. And then you go down a rabbit hole, but you'll then consume this and you'll consume this, and all the time that single source of truth, that data, is learning more about who you are and what you're interested in, so that the next time you come in, you're going to get an even more resonant experience, just as Meta and Amazon, as you say, and Google have been doing it for years, and they're quite successful companies. So
it works.
it works.
There's something in it.
It works. Yeah, I think so. And it's something that
it just gets people sticky and returning, which is kind of what you want to have from there, isn't it?
So your next email is going to be, as I say, okay, well, Tony's big focus is private equity, so bang.
Yeah.
There you go. Here's something that's on point, if you like.
Just coming back to the whole concept of the sort of changing and the wave of evolution of people's relationships with events and industry events. I'm talking about specifically. So, we know that there's that deep human desire to connect and to network and to be around people and to congregate at events. I think there was initial way, my experience and the people I was talking to is there was this relief of we can take that off the balance, but we haven't got to have the planes and the travel and all that sort of thing to get people to events. Yeah. We haven't got the stand that we've got to pay X amount of £1,000 to be on that event for it, and we can we save that off the off the book every time that we're not having to do this events. So it became this sort of overhyped sort of swell that events are dead, long live online, etc. etc. And as people got more and more fed up, I think, of being between in their own 4 walls and all this sort of stuff, and not missing that human connection, that sort of came back with a big boom. And I think if you look at the events I was at in 2022 in particular, there was a genuine feel-good factor of people coming back into that, and all of the sort of growing, I think, frustration of the event world in 18, 19, and this is expensive, and are we getting stuff, and are the agendas tight enough, and are we getting stuff that's personalised and relevant, and are they sponsor-driven content, or is it actually something here which is going to be interesting and innovative? That was all the sort of stuff we were hearing. 2022, I think, sort of came back with as I say, very, very strongly, and there was real thought process that was put in, and they were saying, right, we've had almost this sort of hiatus of 18 months to try and get this right. People were using words a lot like webinar fatigue at that sort of stage, and sort of getting tired with the same sort of things coming up, and subscription rates were going down from those sort of online pieces that people were looking at that sort of stage. And I feel like now we're getting into this sort of zone where it can go one of 2 ways, and this is just my hypothesising around this. One of which is we go through it and we go back to 2018-19 where it's people just trying to commoditize things too much and push sponsored based content out there and go back and sort of rerun the same sort of mistakes. The other thing I'm really excited about, which is people recognize all of the gains and the lessons from 2020 to 2024 effectively, understand what people want, create this sort of hybrid place where some people, for a multitude of different reasons can't or won't or don't want to be at events, and some people desperately do, and create these things there where we are talking about things which can be taken back and created with real ROI, with real solutions for it. And I guess where Totem, you guys sit is right in the middle of getting that bit right. Yeah,
and we're able to do that because we're across so many events.
Yeah.
Not just on the commercial side.
Yeah.
But corporate events as well.
Yeah.
And financial services in particular are, I think, much more focused on the quality of the experience, and now we've got, we represent some brands I can't talk about, but huge asset management brands who are almost trying to outdo each other each year in making their event more of an experience and more interesting for the in-person, whilst being able to connect the off-person. So it's about the attendee at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That they're the most important people. Events are about connecting people. People go to events to connect and they go to learn.
Yeah.
There should be the two primary objectives from an event.
And for the merch.
Yeah, and for the merch, of course. And for the merch. But we're very much the same. So we look at it from an audience perspective. We look at the data from our side of things, and we will make recommendations to, whether it be a corporate event or a commercial event, and say was successful at this event and this event and this event in your sector. These are the way that these two types of people interacted. These are the sessions that they attended, and this was how important this was to them. To help us learn and make informed decisions about the development and advancement of our technology, the physical side of our events, and how we can look to improve things as well. So we learn from the events as much as our clients do, I guess, at the end of the day.
Which then creates something there which you can move forward with. You mentioned something off air to me earlier on, which I loved, and I've often spoken about the sort of cobbler's shoes, but you termed it the builder's house.
Yeah.
And it sort of resonates with me across a lot of things which I say within it. But you talked, if you were to sit there and have the term Fintech's builder's house that's thrown into it, how would you expand on that?
Yeah, it was just really an analogy that occurred to me, in that some of the fintech companies that we support have some of the most advanced, sexy-looking technology you can think of. Incredible AI built into it, and incredible UXs. But when they represent their own brand, or when they host their audiences, or when they do anything else, it's at the back of the mind as a builder's house. They're often the least well constructed properties that you come across, because the last thing a builder wants to do when he gets home is start plastering a wall. And they're the same. They should concentrate on what they do best, but they can't leave that side of things behind. So we support them in doing that, whether it's digital hospitality, as I call it, or whether it's at their events, because that's as important as well. They either have to devote money and resource to developing their own software to support that, which is never a great idea in my opinion, unless you actually have a separate team, because it's always going to, it's like I say, it's always going to move to the back of the priorities list and fall behind, or you employ somebody to take care of that thing for you and actually represent you as a brand and as a technological brand properly. Yeah.
And that's a key part of it. Look, when you're talking about being a technology brand and you're putting yourself up there in front of your customers, your investors, or whatever it may be, you've got to make it as slick as possible alongside that as well, haven't you? So there's no point having a all singing, all dancing product and then displaying it in a less than glamorous case when you're putting it out there as well.
Exactly. Look, a property developer wouldn't show future investors around his own house.
Yeah.
He'd show the properties that he built. And it's the same. It's the same.
You mentioned it just fleetingly there, and I don't think an episode of Fintech Focus is complete these days without going into the subject of AI. I know you've got some thoughts on it, and in terms of the AI hype cycle, you hear people who are absolute evangelists, and it's here and it's ready. You hear people who are slightly more sceptical on it, which I guess you're slightly more towards one side than the other there, right?
It's not that I'm sceptical about it. I think AI is here, it's inevitable, it will be more here, it will grow. I just think that a lot of people that want to talk about it or that feel they need to talk about it are, as I said earlier, they're trying to fly before they can run. Yeah. AI ultimately is an engine. It's a tool to help us do things faster, which technology generally is, but an engine needs fuel, and data is the fuel. And so until you've got a really comprehensive, clean set of data to actually put into that engine, you're wasting your time. Yeah. Because you're going to have a Ferrari and try and run it on a cup of tea. It's not going to work. Yeah. And so get the data first. Make sure you understand your clients, your investors, your audience, and then use AI to actually help you facilitate whatever it is you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
That's my thought. It's not. I'm not opposed to AI. I think people need to just stop and think about it.
Stop and pause. Yeah. It's that rubbish in, rubbish out sort of concept, isn't it? And I did hosted an event in New York at the end of last year, which was if data's the new oil, how ready's your engine? And I think that sort of ties into what you're saying, doesn't it? That people have got these grand plans and hopes and aspirations about how everything can be revolutionised by it, but they still haven't done the homework on their base product. And actually, you say, look, data quality to me is particularly in this fintech space is the bit which we're still lagging behind significantly from other areas. If you look at it in e-commerce, for example, it has to be absolutely on point. And some of the things and processes, again, going back to the supermarket analogy earlier on, they are incredibly smart at how they're utilising data to make better decisions about when a jar of Nescafe is bought in Stockport's Asda, that another set of beans go in the ground out in Colombia or wherever it may be. Mm-hmm. And those sort of things just to me make absolute sense. And when you look at it as to how far we've still got to go in this sort of space, it's phenomenal, I think, about what we can do and what we can achieve within all of it.
Absolutely. I mean, people think of retail as being one of the more traditional sectors, but they're miles ahead of lots of people.
Absolutely.
In so many ways, across groceries, fashion, all of these things.
Yeah.
They've been on it for years now.
Yeah.
And the rest have got to catch up.
Yeah. And that's the exciting side of it. So with you guys at the forefront. So let's have a look at what that means and what happens to Totem. So what's the you've been there for 18 months or so now, I think you said. Tell me a little bit about what the next couple of years looks like for the business. What's exciting? Where you're heading? 20-year-old business, you say, in the space, got some good market share, doing some pretty cool, extraordinary things in the sector at the moment. What's the future look like?
I think what's exciting for us at the moment is our ability actually to help people capture this data, as I say, and create this single source of truth, so that going forwards we will then plug in AI tools to facilitate people's goals and objectives. So that's quite an exciting, probably 18 months, 2 years. At the moment, what we're very, very busy doing is onboarding a lot of new clients who are now understanding that, okay, as I said, COVID happened, we learned a lot, now we're back to in-person, we want to still continue to understand and learn more. So we're bringing a lot of those clients in, and our technology is evolving according to our clients' needs. So we've got obviously an infrastructure, of fantastic suite of technology and products that's now at a point where we're developing according to our clients and what the market needs, and what the market needs is just to be better. It's a very competitive space, as you say, and so we are pushing hard to stay at the forefront and effectively be pioneers of that space. Our mobile app adoption is something like 30% above industry average for our events.
Okay. Why do you think that is?
It's because, as I said before, the focus, it's no longer good enough just to go, oh yeah, we've got an app. And actually it just opens a website with an agenda on it and 15 sponsors' logos. Nobody's going to use it.
Yeah.
You're not going to learn anything about them, and they're not going to come away with a great feeling about it. And so connecting people is really, really key. As I say, people generally go to events for two things: one, to connect, and two, to learn. And so doing that as much as possible within the technology has been really, really key for us. And yeah, I think in our experience, the smaller events are growing as a market share. Your AGMs, your 30 to 50 attendees, maybe one day in a venue somewhere, but it's no longer good enough to go to. I'm going to mention, I don't know, Holiday Inn or whatever it is. Sorry, Holiday Inn. But, and hire I'm sure, and hire a meeting room, and put a TV on the stage, and it's not good enough.
Yeah.
Again, talk about digital hospitality, event hospitality. That's not good enough an experience anymore, and so people are trying to outdo each other, and we love that because that's what we're kind of focused.
That's where the edge comes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You mentioned it, I think, at the very start. You said enough about me, but I want to just go back to you. Look, you've joined a business there, having taken another company through to Series B and gone through this. I'm always interested in people when they take those sort of roles. You're the CRO of the company.
Yes.
What made you say this is something which I can't afford to not get involved in? Because I think once you've had that and you've got that on your CV and you've gone through that sort of journey and you've done a very impressive, as I say, Series B journey beforehand, gives you options, gives you opportunities, gives you some interesting areas you can go into. This is a slight segue from what you've done before. Tell me what was the bit there that said this is irresistible, this is a company I've got to join and this is where I can add some real value to it?
Honestly, it was the conversation I had with the co-founders.
Okay.
They talked to me about the technology, they talked to me about their clients, and they said, we have got an amazing piece of technology. We know it's amazing because Informa said it's amazing.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily, or we're not necessarily experts in how to market it and how to sell it. And that honesty and that kind of carte blanche offering to me was what was exciting. Because I could see they were right. The product was very, very good. And the size of the market was significant. And so that was a challenge I couldn't resist.
Yeah, I think it's when I think of the checklists of great sales leaders and why they want to join a business, and this is something which is obviously the day job and something I'm always interested in. It's right. Is there a sizable addressable market? Is there a massive potential in terms of where we can take it? Have you got a good founding team? And have you got a product there which you think you can sell above the market? So yeah, no brainer as you probably say there.
And when you have that level of honesty, it's quite refreshing.
Transparency
quite
at that level.
Yeah.
And it's not always the case in interviews where people sort of come out there and promise the world and the Dick Whittington story and all that sort of thing. It's a different story.
Exactly.
Look, it sounds brilliant, and I'm I started my career in events before I got into recruitment 25 years ago. So I've always held this for a sort of very strong passion and allegiance to the thing. I think it's fundamental to allowing people to connect and network and add value. So to have you in is an absolute pleasure to see what you guys are doing. I think some of the events you mentioned beforehand, I've been at, and they are fantastic in the detail and the orientation. I get excited these days about seeing people every single year notch it up another sort of level, and that digital experience is so important and such an important part of it. So it's been great having you on the show, Matt. For people who are listening to it and want to find out a little bit more about you, about Totem, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
LinkedIn is obviously always a good one.
Or we should be tagged you in.
Yeah, just find us on there.
Good man. Listen, great to have you on.
Great to meet you.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks very much.
And thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on the next episode of Fintech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.